continue now with a special edition of O'Connor Tonight this holiday week with Professor Matthew Spalding. And I get this all the time. I get it on Twitter and on social media. I get it in emails. I get it from people who watch the show, love the show. They comment on the show and they say, yeah, Larry, love the conversation. Thanks for the discussion. Thanks for the debate. None of it matters because the whole system is rigged. Getting out to vote doesn't matter anymore because the whole thing is fixed. It's an incredibly destructive and insidious thing to think. But do they have a point? Professor Spalding, do they have a point? Because we've seen some really extraordinary things going on, what with ballot harvesting, with mail-in voting during the pandemic that didn't seem to be under the same kind of oversight and auspices that we've seen in the past. This is a real problem when people walk away from an election not thinking that it was run properly.
Well, first I would recognize that the reaction of a lot of people, a lot of this is very confusing. What exactly is going on? What is exactly happening and not happening?
And it should be clear, by the way, that a winner of an election hardly ever thinks that it was rigged.
Of course.
Very rarely does the winner say, yeah, it was fixed.
But, you know, and there are some things that are still really not clear to me either. I think there's some things we don't have anywhere near a consensus on, especially when it comes to particulars. But having said that, I think the general concern I heartily endorse and agree with. What bothers me so much about what I see going on around her are really two things. One is, you used the word rigged. That was actually the title of one of my colleagues, Molly Hemingway, a Federalist, but also at Hillsdale College, wrote a book on that. And I think she raised what I think are really the key questions. What happens well before the election in terms of changes in the electoral system and how it is to operate? I think before the 2020 election about the judicial decisions, about extended voting, about all of these things. Her argument, which I think is actually I think much more very convincing, is that a lot of it was baked into the cake beforehand. So in that sense, I think there's a lot of kind of the inner workings of how the system ought to work that has been changed in many ways, not according to the consent of the American people. That is not through legislatures, for instance, which I find very troubling. In these latest cycles, including the election we just had, one of the things that bothers me the most is this notion of ballot harvesting. And again, I think we need to think through the details of it, but broadly speaking, if we want to put it in the most general terms, we increasingly are seeing kind of politics by databases. It's no longer the case where the American people, the sovereign American people, who are, when they're voting, they're essentially legislating. They are acting as the sovereign in terms of pushing and shaping politics. What makes them sovereign, what makes an election such an act of sovereignty is they act together. It's a deliberative process. It's a decision. Well, the more and more it's no longer election day, but it's election week and month and extended out. The more and more it's about merely having a process where you're essentially, you're no longer Larry O'Connor, you're this person in a database, and we're going to get you the ballot, we're going to help you fill out the ballot and bring it back.
Right.
If that's what it becomes.
Because I fit a certain profile,
exactly.
And so they focus on me versus somebody else.
I mean,
and they want to mine me.
If that becomes an aspect of normal American politics, it really undermines the sense in which we as an electorate are a deliberative body and we're making decisions in an election. To think about it, I think it's now the case that a third or so of the electorate votes well before election day. That number may well increase when it starts becoming seen as to one's political advantage to front load through some sort of ballot harvesting.
Well, that's certainly the narrative you're hearing from Republicans right now. It's like, all right, finally, we don't like
they're going to do it, we're going to do it too.
That's right.
Well, can we actually say that that's an electorate deliberating about an actual election issue? Let's say most people vote before they have candidate debates.
Right.
Most people vote before the kind of the serious ads, to the extent there aren't serious ads anymore, occur. It really undermines the extent to which we are self-governing in the first place. And I find that very troubling. Now, I would immediately add that I don't think the system is rigged to the point where we ought not to participate. I think we should be aware of what's going on, see what's going on, and act accordingly. And so, I think how we react, how do we get involved, how do we recover this, really ought to be the focus, as opposed to throwing up our hands, not participating in an election to kind of throw off the system.
Yeah.
These strike me as just ridiculous arguments.
But it is incredibly destructive, and sort of it deteriorates the American ethic, I think, when you don't feel like an election was carried out properly and you can't trust the outcome. I know people who live in states where their voting and voter integrity laws are absolutely solid, but they're outraged over what they see maybe in Arizona or in California, and they throw up their hands and say, that's it, I'm done participating. Which makes no sense if you think about it, because it's like, sure, that's a problem in Arizona, but if you live in this state and everything's fine, why would you not keep voting? But it has this insidious sort of corrosion to it.
Well, there are many reasons why I think DeSantis did so well in his gubernatorial reelection. He's a smart, good candidate. But one of them has to do with the fact that in Florida, all of these things are illegal. They've actually done election reform.
They actually have locked down their state very well.
What it does show is that you can recover. You can reset the clock, if you will, and have a system that works. So I agree with all these concerns. I agree with the notion that something deeply problematic is going on in our electoral system, in the fact that the administrative space, these bureaucrats are making decisions outside of consent. We can go on and on and on. But I think we need to see it for what it is. This is a change in our governance and a change in our system. It's a change in how this regime operates. But as so far, we can still participate, we can still vote, we can still get involved in things. We're seeing more and more activity, I think, in lower levels of government, not only states, but also local government and school boards. That is all for the good. And so if this is a moment to kind of relearn that and see that for what it is, then it could be that this last election, which the Republicans didn't do as good as was expected, might be more akin to, say, 1978, in which the Republicans didn't do that well, but it set up 1980.
Yeah.
So there are always possibilities.
Only works if you've got a Ronald Reagan ready to take the stage.
But of course, you never know. This is what's great about politics, and why I think there's always a great possibility of recovery. If we think that we, by nature, are self-governing individuals and not ruled by experts, and it's not a matter of that. It's a matter of seeing and thinking and being, statesmanlike and prudent and active in our politics. There's always a possibility. It's the very nature of what it means to be an American. It's always a possibility to recover. It's harder to do so in the midst of all the things we see around us today, but there's no reason why we should throw in the towel and give up on the possibility. There's a lot of things structurally that are still well placed. They're there, waiting to be recovered.
I feel like you and I are the last optimists in this town, seriously.
I always like to say I send my students down at the beginning of every semester to see if the Constitution is still there, and it's still there.
So things are so far so good. All right, a little bit more with Professor Matthew Spalding on this very special edition of O'Connor Tonight. We continue our discussion about, first principles, values, our founding ideals, just the little stuff that keeps our country the greatest bastion of freedom and liberty on the planet. Keep it here. There's more to come on O'Connor Tonight.